Hi everyone, my name is Vess Rusev and this is episode 37 of the East Auckland Property Show. And today I have a very interesting guest and I look forward to this discussion. She's the director of Duncan King Law. She also does training for ANZ and Baylis Real Estate. And she's also the executive of the property law section of the New Zealand Law Society. She's Kristine King. Hi Kristine, how are you?
Hi, nice to see you, Vess. Hopefully you're enjoying your bubble at the moment.
Yes, yeah. Spending time with the family, bonding with the girls. And yeah, so we're going through some unprecedented times at the moment, and I would like to hear your perspective on a few different topics. So let's start with how busy are you during the lockdown?
Well, kind of sadly and strangely enough, I actually thought I was going to be taking April off for a whole holiday. I was going to be away for the whole month overseas, but obviously that got cancelled. So I thought, no, it'll be fine. I'll take some quiet time during lockdown. But funnily enough, with everything that's going on at the moment, I think I'm actually working more hours than I would normally. So for me, obviously, I've got my practice. All of my staff are now working remotely. Fortunately for our firm, we have been working on a lot of our staff working remotely because they have flexible arrangements with them because we support them with their families, whether it's elderly parents or children. So we already had our system set up. So we rolled out pretty smoothly into a full remote working environment, which is great. So obviously we've got a lot of things happening there. I'll talk to you about what we're seeing in the firm, some interesting things. But obviously you alluded to that I'm still doing a lot of educational events, so recording a lot of webinars. I think I've got another event on tonight that I'm recording for. But also with my position with the Law Society, we're doing a lot of work to really have a look at how property lawyers transact, how we settle things in this environment, but also quite interestingly, whether there's certain parts of our law that actually needs to be changed to facilitate what we're trying to do and the fact that we can't see each other in person at the moment. So a lot of analysis of how we sign documents, how we complete transactions, and potentially what we might be able to do to improve that, depending on how long this sort of situation goes on. So really, really busy time. So funnily enough, whilst I am working from home, I'm in my study now. I think there's been a lot of hours in this chair, and I'm imagining for the rest of the lockdown we're going to have a similar sort of situation. So I guess the thing is, then you'll be asking me, what kind of work are we seeing?
Yeah, the majority of the time.
Certainly, saying to people, a lot of it is fighting fires. So we've had a lot of fights about property settlements, and I'll talk to you a bit about why that's occurring. So we've got a lot of the property work. So that's existing contracts and how we deal with settlement. We've also got a lot of new contracts, I know, coming on. Some people, because they were already in that process of looking, so we had some conditional contracts, so working through that. But also we've had a flood of people seeing this as a time of opportunity, and they're really starting to get out there and look at properties. And a lot of our real estate agents are finding other ways to facilitate that engagement, so video tours and things like that. So I think certainly it is a time for innovation, and we're still seeing quite a bit of activity there. But I think it's also been an opportunity for a lot of people to be at home and have a think about their life and their circumstances. So bear with me about this. So we've had a big flood of emergency wills, and certainly as we were heading into that level 3 lockdown for those few days, I was doing a car park drive-in service where people would come in their cars, sit in their cars, I'd run the documents out, gloves, masks, the whole thing. We'd see people sign in their cars, and then we would scan them copies. So we did a lot of work like that, wills, enduring powers of attorney. But now we're seeing a lot of people obviously sitting at home thinking about their life and wanting to get that sort of legal admin tidied up. So talking to people about their trusts, getting those things sorted out, wills, enduring powers of attorney, and just really, trying to get on top of things. Really sadly, we've already had a bit of a spike in inquiries about separation. And I mean that, I know, a little bit too much time with the spouse, and perhaps it hadn't been good anyway. And certainly, even after Easter, we've had a number of inquiries this morning. So kind of think that type of work will increase. Yeah. And then in terms of my partner at work, he does a lot of commercial and employment work. So obviously he's been dealing with a lot of clients about whether they've got the ability to stop paying a portion or all of their rent to their commercial landlords, but also talking to those companies about how they're handling their employment matters, whether it's redundancies or talking to staff about reducing wages or their hours of work. So at the moment, a huge amount of work, and certainly a lot of it I would call COVID emergency work. So interesting. But I think you will be very interested in where we're at with the property side of things. So for us at the moment, our work is really split into two types with our properties. So if it's a conditional agreement, we're doing a lot of work around extending conditions, fair enough, because it's quite hard to, maybe get in there and you can't possibly do a building inspection. But also the banks have got a lot of work on at the moment, dealing with mortgage holiday requests and things like that. So for a lot of people, they're extending out their finance conditions, but also as they're trying to see what's going to happen for them personally. So our conditional deals, extending conditions, changing the settlement date, but we're also having some purchasers put in like a drop hand solution. So what they're saying is, if this can't be settled within so many months, making arrangements with the vendor that they can cancel. So, there's a lot of negotiation work there. But certainly the big amount of work we're dealing with at the moment is with our unconditional deals. And it's essentially everybody trying to work out how to deal with settlement. Okay. There's two aspects there. One is pre-settlement inspection, so your ability to go into the property and have a look around and make sure it looks good. What do? You can't get in there. But also it's actually settlement itself. Okay, so we've got situations where the vendors can't move out. They're stuck. They don't want to be there. But also situations where the purchasers can't move in. And it's everybody trying to work out how to deal with that. So the official guidance from the New Zealand Law Society was to look at asking everybody to consider deferring settlements till around the 10th working day after we drop to level 2. And certainly I know a lot of the feedback, some of it was good, some of it was bad. A lot of people asked me why the Law Society suggested level 2. I think really what it came down to was a conservative position, because we're all dealing with this very new novel situation and trying to work out what would be a safe time to have people moving through our community, but also potentially going into areas that had been other people's bubbles. Okay, because obviously you've probably seen the reports in the media that COVID can last on some hard surfaces up to 72 hours. So there was some thought about how safe and sensible it is to have movers going into a house or another family within that 72-hour time frame. So that's where we got the level 2 from. There's also been quite a bit of feedback about we might end up with a flood of settlements all on the same day. So if everybody's, if everybody's at the 10th working day, for our lawyers, we've been putting off hundreds of deals. Will we be able to cope with a flood on one day? But also, will our banking system be able to deal with it? Will you get your insurance certificates from your insurers? All of that sort of stuff. So certainly we're putting in some different thoughts with our clients at the moment. And in some cases, if it's a bare piece of land or we've got tenants in situ, a lot of the times people are actually settling. So the good piece of positive news about this is lawyers are still working, the banks are still working, so we can facilitate settlements in some circumstances.
Okay? It's interesting. I just did a agreement on a settlement to be 5 working days after we go.
Yeah.
So for the same reason, and then think about all the moving trucks and all the people that are doing it. That'll be
exactly. So yeah, your logic is the same as ours. We're certainly
yes.
in our firm trying to get a spread of dates,
Mm.
and then even on some of ours, we're suggesting so many working days down to level 2 or such other level where we're told that settlements of properties can occur, including moving companies and things like that. Because we might find, depending on how the situation is dealt with, we might have different regions on different levels, okay? Or we might get some overarching guidance that says, look, as long as you're not using a moving company, so you're moving your own bubble, this is going to be okay. So again, because this is very much like a moving feast in terms of
Yes.
how we're dealing with it, I think we're all trying to find some ways to cope. So we're still seeing a lot of fights, though, because ultimately the contracts, and most of us are on those ADLS standard form contracts,
Mm-hmm.
they don't envisage a pandemic occurring. And certainly there's a lot of people who are taking that strict approach of, I don't care what the Law Society has suggested, my contract says I'm going to settle on this day and I'm going to stick to it. Because the other thing you've got to think about, and we're encouraging our purchasers to consider, is you might have a finance offer now that only extends for a certain time frame, okay?
Yes.
And depending on your financial circumstances, we don't know if you'll be able to extend that finance offer, or there may be something within your own circumstances, your work or your employment, that may impact the bank's ability to continue with that offer. So these days, it's very much case by case. We're saying to our vendors and our purchasers, think about the situation. Is there any way we can deal with it? And we're certainly coming up with some novel solutions. Like we've got a few at the moment where the purchaser has said, look, I really do want to settle because I've got a great finance offer in place. But obviously they can't move in. So the vendor is going to rent the property back off them for a period until everybody's allowed to move. So we're doing some cool stuff like that. So certainly if you do have any viewers today that have got a contract on foot, and it's likely that they've got settlement coming up in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks, I would encourage them to talk to their lawyers nice and early, because it may be that they've got to get into a bit of dialogue between the lawyers just to work out which solution might fit everybody, it might work. So better to talk nice and early.
Yes.
Same thing also if you, Vess, have got people looking to buy or sell at the moment. We can certainly transact, we can certainly look after them. But my thought there is to make sure that your conditions are nice and long, so a little bit longer than usual, okay? Because appreciate that whilst council is working, the bank's working, we're working, we're all pretty busy with some of the issues. So it can give us a little bit more time, but there's still work to be done in contracts. So yeah, it's interesting times.
So do you have some very interesting cases that you can share with us that are not confidential, or something that you haven't experienced before?
Sure. It's almost like we're getting a sort of an interesting situation on almost every file these days, because it really depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on and what you're trying to achieve out of it. So we've seen some pretty amazing behaviour. And I know you and I were chatting before that we're really starting to see a sense of community and some really amazing, kind behaviour. And even on some of our property deals, we've seen that come through. So vendors saying to purchasers, don't worry, let's defer, there will be no penalties, and then trying to find some ways to help them. And same thing with purchasers, with vendors stuck in the house. They've done some really, really nice things and worked together really, quite well, which is wonderful. But the corollary of that, though, we've seen some pretty nasty ones, including we've got one at the moment and the vendors actually deferred settlement for 6 months at the request of the purchasers. And then obviously the situations occurred. So my poor vendors didn't even want to be here anyway, and now they're stuck in the house. And the purchaser has turned around and said to them, we'll settle, but it's on the basis that you pay us $2,000 a week in rent. I know. Yeah. So not really kind behaviour. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's really, really tricky for us as lawyers, because ultimately we do have to do what our clients ask us to do, and they can stick with the contract. I truly believe, though, that we're going to have a lot of litigation off the back of this situation, because who's right? And we really don't know how judges are going to look at the situation and how they'll approach it. My biggest piece of advice is actually be very, very careful running a strict legal argument. You might be right, the contract might back your position, but you will find that it's very expensive to be right. And quite sadly, I know the only winners out of a fight like that will probably be the lawyers. Yeah. So I think, sometimes you need to actually weigh up really what is the cost for you versus how much you might shout out to your lawyer to be right, to fight that fight for you. But certainly, my big message at the moment is we are transacting. We can do a lot of work for you. If anything, I'm loving all the Zoom meetings at the moment. For my clients, it means they don't have to travel through Auckland traffic. And, I've got the ability to share screens with you and show documents. So we're finding some new and novel ways to work, but also the banks and a lot of the other organisations are working with us. So they've enabled us to, in most instances, sign bank documents via a AVL or a video call. So we can certainly still do stuff. And I know there's going to be some more guidance put out about how we might have other documents signed at this time. So super, super interesting times, but I don't think it's necessarily negative. I think it will change the way we work, but in a lot of ways, it's probably a good thing. You know what I mean? So,
like any change at the beginning, it's a little bit challenging, and then as the time goes, we're going to adapt and look for new opportunities. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. And I think long term, you might find it will be more common that you interact with your professionals this way. Certainly for me, it means I can produce a more efficient result for you, because you can, just quickly have a little Zoom meeting with me. I can gauge your reaction, and then we can get on and back into the work we're doing. So it'll be certainly interesting moving forward to see how long term this actually impacts the way we work.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting because this morning we had I think we were 750 people on a Zoom call with the whole Baylis team, with the Baylis family, and it was really interesting to share insight with a completely different perspective. So yeah, definitely that will be the way to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And an interesting little nugget for you. I was chatting with my husband actually over Easter, because every single day at the moment I'm getting a flood of inquiries from people overseas who are really seeing the amazing things that we're doing in New Zealand, and it's triggering more of an interest in moving here and buying property. So every day I'm getting inquiries from people, how they might do that, what's required to buy a property in New Zealand. And actually, I think we long term will have more and more people interested in our country as a true safe harbour, because we've done so well in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, this was another topic that we discussed this morning, that probably the government will look into loosen up all the requirements of investing in New Zealand. Probably, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm not sure if you guys are up to date with it, but certainly there's some look at the processes in the Overseas Investment Office, and they're calling it the phase 2 reform. So there had been some attention applied late last year and early this year. And one of the measures that has been considered is ways to facilitate people who really do want to move here permanently, and making and potentially streamlining the application process so it's a bit faster. So yeah, it'll be certainly interesting after the restrictions lift to see if we get some more attention there. But you know, we're certainly getting a lot of people asking us for assistance with that.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. Really appreciate your time. I know we have a busy schedule and you have a lot of stuff to do. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And if there are any interesting changes in the next couple of weeks, we can do another one, just if there is anything that we can update everyone that's watching.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, it'd be great if we do get some new news about the levels, and if we are changing down to level 3, to maybe have a catch up and talk through how property settlements could work in level 3, but also how real estate agents would be looking to sell property. It'd be great.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Kristine. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Wonderful. Not a problem. Thanks, Steve.
Bye,
everybody. Bye.